Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sonically podcast, where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo, and we have a very special guest today. Our guest is an RIAA certified multi platinum American record producer and songwriter who has garnered billions of streams across all platforms. He has worked with the likes of Jennifer Lopez, Jason Derulo, Anitta, Rida, Rita Ora, Lil Wayne, the Backstreet Boys, Big Bang, and many, many more. His music crosses genres and cultures, winning him several Billboard number ones in pop, K-pop, and Latin, as well as multiple BMI awards. So, without further ado, we are super honored to have Chaz Mishan join us to tell us about his journey as a music creator. Welcome, Chaz.
Thank you for having me, Elmo. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And I've been really excited about this interview because for those that don't know, Chaz and I had done some work previously before COVID. And
Yep.
it was really cool because it was a situation where we all just kind of got together and started working on this J-pop group called XG, and it was just something about the chemistry. We got super close,
hmm
and fast forward years later, the group has come out. Chaz continues to kill the game with his music, and yeah, now we're here talking. So yeah, nice to have you,
Yeah,
man.
glad to be here. We had a lot of fun working on that.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and now we're seeing this group coming out and just sort of like killing YouTube and killing the charts. Yeah, so it's kind of cool to see the fruits of the labor sort of like really panning out.
Yeah.
Um,
It's cool to
but
see
yeah,
that growth and that inception from like idea to out. See that happen in real time.
totally, totally. Yeah, but um, yeah, and sort of like in our discussions about sort of like our journeys in this music game. Um, there's been a lot of everybody has a very unique story to tell, and you yourself are no exception of that. So I was wondering if we might be able to rewind back, to the beginning of your journey. um, did you grow up with music in your life?
Yeah, I did and I didn't. I didn't grow up in a musical household per se. Neither of my parents are musicians. My dad was in real estate. My mom was in catering. But my dad was very creative. He had a brief career as like a fashion designer, making leather goods, and he made a leather jacket for like Muhammad Ali and a trumpet
Wow.
bag for Miles Davis. He was also in construction, so our apartment was always like changing, and so there was a creative spark around me. It just wasn't focused on music at the time. Um, but I remember driving around with my dad in his Ford Thunderbird, and he would blast Bon Jovi, "Shot Through the Heart" and Journey's "Don't Stop Believing" while we'd like ride down Miami. And that was my earliest memory of music. And I think I realized quickly that anytime I hear those songs, even to this day, I'm like back in that car with my dad. I can feel the leather, I can see the dashboard, um, I can smell it, and it encapsulates like a moment in time. And so for me, that was my earliest memory of music, and then from there discovering guitar at like 11.
Mm.
I uh i was like off to the races, but that's definitely my earliest memory of music in my life.
Yeah, so was your dad pretty supportive, like when you have that memory of riding in that car with him singing Bon Jovi? um, was he as enthusiastic as you in those moments? And w- sort of like, was he the one who kind of gave you that confirmation that, yeah, like this could be a good path for you?
He was very supportive in a I don't think he originally knew that was going to be my career path. I think I was like 11, and I had some friends that two of my best friends, one picked up the guitar and one played piano, and we'd all hang out, and then I was like left out. And so I was like, I need an instrument. So I was like, Dad, can you get me a guitar? And he instantly got me a guitar and was super supportive. I think going into school in college, it's always concerning to a parent when they're like, I'm not sure if I want to do school or I need school. And I had gotten some scholarships to go to schools, and I did some like university for like a couple of years, but I knew that wasn't my path to be a music producer. And even though outwardly he would say, you need a backup, you need to do this, and I would take jobs while I was trying to be a music producer. I did real estate, painted houses, and worked at stores and taught music. Um, he was always actively supporting me. He was always there behind me saying, you're never going to fall. I'll always catch you, but you do need to go make some money in the world. And so, yeah, he always lit a fire under me that I might fall, but he was always there to make sure I was good.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like for parents that don't really know much about this field or this space, um, I feel like there's always concern about making a living
Yep.
from this thing called music, right? Because
Yeah.
traditionally, a lot of people who do attempt creative work, um, they may not make money for a really long time, or they may never make money. Um,
Yep.
was there some sort of like moment along that where you're like, maybe you sold your first track or whatever, and it kind of alleviated that concern for your dad or anything?
Yeah, there was definitely a moment because early on, you don't know what you don't know. So I thought 3 months, I'll be Timberland, we'll be fine. Um, I think it took me 3 years to get my first placement. I think the first turning point was I had produced a song on the Birdman album called what's the name of the song? It ended up being My Life with The Game and Lil Wayne. And they took the hook from that song that I did with Birdman and Lil Wayne and redid it. Cool and Dre reproduced it as a song for the game called My Life. And my dad calls me and is like, "Hey, there's a check here for $30,000."
Whoa.
And I was like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to get paid $700 from the beat I sold like 8 months ago. Like, what? And he's like, "Yeah." And sure enough, that was just like a quarter royalty check for My Life. And he was like, "Oh, there's actual money here. You could do this." And I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah." To be honest, it was shocking to me.
Yeah.
um, so I think that was like the turning point where I realized this is a business. There is money there, and I can make a living doing this if I work hard enough. Which is kind of like any business. I looked at it. My dad was very business oriented, so I looked at music production as like a startup.
Mm.
There's going to be a burn rate in the beginning. I'm going to be losing, and I have to put the time in, build up my clients, and eventually I can get there. That was like the first confirmation of that.
Right on. So, how did you discover the process of creating music from that time where you picked up the guitar to that moment where you're like, this this is something like I can take my creative ideas, I can channel them into this software or whatever it was. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I do. It was kind of an evolution. I was in bands. I was in jazz bands and rock bands all through my teens and even into my early 20s. And I would write songs on guitar. Some of them were covers, and a lot of them we just try to write music, me and the singer. And I had a 4-track tape recorder in my room. So just 4 mono tracks. Um, I'm dating myself here a little age wise. And I had a drum set in my room, one mic, and I would just put the mic up and then play a beat and then take my bass and play a bass line and then take my guitar and do the chords. And then I would have like my friends sing around it. But I had no idea I was producing. I just didn't have anybody else to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I didn't have like access to a studio. And to be honest, I didn't know it was a career. Um, And then I think when I was like 19, someone asked me to go to a music studio and they would pay me like $50. It was like a friend of a friend to work with this producer named Troy Bell, who to this day is a great friend. And I walked in and he had like the MPC drum machine and like this Triton keyboard. And I watched his process and I was blown away that you could play all of these parts. He had strings and keyboards all with like a single keyboard. I had never seen that before. Um, and he was kind enough to like let me use the studio at night when he wasn't using it. And I would just play guitar for him. And he really showed me that like this is a career. This is like something you
Mm.
could do. And I was instantly hooked because I was a guitar player, but I really loved organizing people and parts. And even in my bands, I was organizing the drummer and the bass player and the songs we would do. And I always found that to be more interesting than just playing the single part.
Mm.
And honestly, meeting him, that interaction changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Wow. So you actually did have a mentor along the way that showed you stuff to put you on the path to sort of more like exploring more with this type of work. And I feel like not everybody has that. There's a lot of kids that are in their mom's basement, looking for community, looking for stuff. But yeah, that's really, really awesome that you had that. You're fortunate enough to have somebody near you that could show you some of the ropes.
Oh yeah, really lucky. I mean, and to be honest, I've had many mentors along the way. That was my my introductory to production, and then any chance I got to work under another producer, I would engineer for free, or I would do whatever I could do to be in the room to watch their process. And I think through the years, I've been lucky to have like 3 or 4 people that I can really count on.
Awesome. There's a lot of these stories that I hear about like people's journeys where there's a lot of like sacrifice and hardship. You know, um, some people that I talked to, it was sort of like getting an internship at a studio, sweeping the floors, just
Mm-hmm.
for that shot to sit in you know, sit in the chair at the console. Um, was there any of that for you? Like, were there any hardships along your journey to becoming a renowned music producer? And if there were, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, there's almost too many to count. And I don't think those hardships are unique to music. I think they're ubiquitous across like any field or anything you're doing that's challenging and when you're getting into it. And I think it progresses in different ways as you're doing it. So like in the beginning, it's just not knowing that you're not good. You make records, you work on tracks, you're terrible, and you send them out, you get no response. And your initial thought is not I'm terrible. It's they must not like me, or I'm not in the circle, or it's because I'm not signed. And the reality is you're just not good. And whenever you get to a good point, people start hitting you back like immediately. Um, and so that's the first hardship, is being able to get punched in the mouth repeatedly with rejection and be able to take that and use that as fuel to keep going. The other hard part about that is doing that while trying to financially stay afloat. So taking other jobs and doing that thing. And then as soon as you get other success, you're kind of looking at the next phase, which is trying to stand out and make a name for yourself. And which direction do you want to go stylistically, and how do you want to carve out your niche, and how do you want people to view you? And that's a whole nother hardship. And then you always hear the stories about people stealing records and ideas, and I've had that happen countless times where a label will say, hey, we love this record, we love this track, we love this idea, and then you hear the exact same record pretty much to a T, um, by their producers at their label. So you just have to have a thick skin and not take it too personally and just keep moving forward. And that's kind of been a strength of mine. One of my favorite movies is Rocky. He just gets just beat down, but
Yeah.
he always somehow gets up. And I kind of try to apply that to my career and to life. Like I can take the punches and I just keep going because I love music, and none of that will affect my love for wanting to keep making and creating.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about you. You have a very sort of zen like personality where, regardless of sort of the energy around you, negative or positive, you're able to just sort of just kind of absorb it and just channel it. And yeah, you just have it everything just kind of seems cool with you. I guess it's because you've seen a lot and been through a lot.
Yeah, I heard a quote years ago that was like, "Nothing's as good or as bad as you think it is." Like most things you think is amazing, you get a call and it's gonna be the first single. It's amazing. It's like sounds great, you know. And if something
Mhm.
bad happens, they stole this or this happened, also sounds good. Like it usually isn't as bad as you think it is, and in the
Mm.
highs, you know, you just try to be level-headed about it.
Yeah.
I
You,
prefer the journey over the destination.
you talk about some of the part-time gigs that you had while trying to sort of navigate the financial and sort of like the creative discovery.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the jobs that you had, side
Oh
hustles
man,
that you had and you worked on? Yeah.
what didn't I do? Let's see. I worked at a music store, like fixing guitars. I was a music teacher there. I worked at a yogurt shop, TCBY. Shout out, country's best yogurt. I painted houses, inside and outside, which during the summer in Miami is brutal. I worked at a flea market. I did real estate. That's how I bought my first studio. I would like sell apartments and
Wow.
houses, at 18. And yeah, I pretty much have done almost everything early on. So um, now that I can, you know, I've been fortunate enough the last, like, you know, I don't know how long now. It's been a minute to survive solely off music. It's a blessing. So I'm
Yeah.
glad I get
How
to do
many
this
years
every day.
have you been going, surviving just solely on music?
I think my last real job, I think it was like 24. No, 25, maybe like 24, 25. So it's been
Wow. It's been a
like
minute.
15 years. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah,
minute.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, there's been a lot of debate about the definition of what a music producer actually is or does, or how you would define that.
Hmm.
I was watching a short on DJ Khaled, and he was sort of like describing what he does, and a lot of people in the community are like, "What does he do?" Um, I'm curious, how would you define music producer?
You know, I think it's changed a little bit. I've thought about this quite a bit, especially talking to songwriter friends of mine, and the debate about songwriter pay and making sure that songwriters get paid, which I think they need to be. Um, and Khaled's definitely, I would say, a producer. And I think it boils down, and I could be wrong about this. I think it's like any company, it's like customer acquisition. So, like, the hardest part about business is finding the customer to pay for it. So if you are bringing in the customer, then you're essentially a producer. The producer is the person bringing in the client, organizing everybody, putting the whole deal together, negotiating it, making it happen, making sure everybody's taken care of. And so a Khaled is overseeing the creative aspect of that. And obviously the client is him and he does well. And I think creators in the space, not just producers, could benefit from that. You know, thinking of themselves as not just a writer, not just an engineer, but like a overall producer of the project. Because I know a lot of songwriter friends who will do that. They're like, okay, I'm gonna hire, give me the budget. Chaz, how much do you want? Okay, you want this much? Okay, great. I'm gonna hire the engineer. I'm gonna book the studio. I'm bringing in the client, and now they're getting a huge upfront. And as a producer, if you're bringing me the client, I'm down. Let's let's split it evenly, or you pay me what you think you want to pay me, and if I want to do it, then I'll do it. And so I think more people are producers than they think nowadays. I think there's beat
Hmm,
makers, and you just make tracks, but the person overseeing the whole project, I think, is the producer.
I
And
see.
so I think that can give power to a lot of creatives who define themselves as, oh, I'm just an engineer, I'm just a musician, I'm just a writer. It's like if you put the project together, like you should get the lion's share. And so I've had
Hmm.
writers bring me projects and I'm like, yeah, you take more. I'm good with this. And let's do more. And I think that would help the
Yeah.
community.
I think like traditionally though, the beat maker, because it was like back in the day when like Kanye was, that whole Rockefeller era, Just Blaze, Kanye, like it was sort of like whoever made the beat
Hmm.
was listed as the producer on the credits.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, that's where the confusion comes in. Is sort of like, is the beat maker the producer, even if he isn't the visionary of that particular project, or um, does it just depend on the situation?
No, I think the beat maker. Obviously, I'm biased here because I'm a beat maker as well. But I think the beat maker should absolutely be there as a producer. I mean, it's it's a little convoluted because, but the beat maker is a producer because he's giving the foundation for the song to write to. Unless the song exists and you're hiring the producer to for a flat fee to just like produce around it, and everything's negotiable, I'd say. But like DJ Khaled may be a producer, but he's always crediting the producers who actually made the beat, right? And
Mm,
I think that's super important. Like you can't just say, "Oh, I'm overseeing everything, so I'm just going to make you a writer and I'm not going to give you the production credit," because that would be messed up.
mm-hmm.
And I think we've both seen that happen. And
Yep.
so that's important. But I think even mainly, I think what I was talking about is even on the business side, making sure the people who bring in the projects are like producers, but the beat makers also need to get their shine and get their credit. And traditionally, that spot has been reserved for in the credits under producer. That's where they
Mm-hmm.
shine. They should be there too. But if you've overseen the project, you brought the money in as a creative, then you could be there. Now I think the line gets blurred when you're like an A&R, you're double dipping. You're running the project, you're running the group or everything, and then you slide your name in on it. And it's like, well, you
Mm,
already got paid to be the A&R and you're getting paid to run that. Now you want to take the shine away from the creatives, then I think that becomes a problem.
mm.
But I think if you're a writer and you put the whole thing together, then yes, slide in there next to the beat maker because you made the whole project happen. You're a producer too.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is a very clear way of thinking of things. And um, yeah, I just hope that like these blurred lines become a lot clearer as we continue on in the space, because it does seem to get convoluted a little bit. And yeah, I think your explanation definitely did uh, clear that up. So hopefully people can take some notes here. um,
Yeah, and hopefully I'm right. I'm always thinking about that in other people, so I'm open to evolving that. But that's just where I've landed currently, and I
mhm,
think it's a good way for creatives to expand their earning potential.
totally. Speaking of which, a very unique trait about you is that your music has crossed over multiple genres many times successfully. um, and I think a lot of those, the reason for that was the creative choices you made as a producer slash business person. um, some of the genres include hip hop, pop, K-pop, and Latin music. um, I mean, that in itself is tough. Like when I talk to different creators, usually they have one or two genres that they're really good at. How has it been that you've been able to cross over multiple times?
I think my biggest strength, which sometimes gets me in trouble, is a overconfidence in that if someone I know music theory and I know chords and I understand music in general, but my overconfidence to say, hey, can we've got a Latin project. Do you want to do it? And even if I've never done it, yep, I do it. Give me a week, I'll figure it out. Um, I always think if somebody else can figure it out, I can figure it out. And I think people, if you have that mentality, you can figure anything out. There's nothing, you can't figure out. And the first couple might be pretty rough, but then you do it enough, and then it gets better and it gets better. Um, Also, I think growing up in Miami, I was around a lot of culture,
Mhm.
and even as a guitar player, I was in rock bands, and then I played in reggae bands, and then I was in Latin bands, and so I do think being surrounded by not only music but culture helped shape my ability to utilize that in like other genres. Um, there was also a lot of rap. I grew up with rap music, and especially in Miami, so my foundations of early production are all rooted in like heavy drums, and a lot of K-pop is heavy drum oriented, and Latin music is heavy drum oriented. So I think those genres fit my where I cut my teeth early
Mhm.
on pretty well in music. And then it's just all feeling, it's all like, for us, like chords are the coordinates. And
Mhm.
I think using chords to tell a story um, is the foundation. And then it's just putting a beat around it. Um,
Mm.
so I think just my ability I'll say yes. If I'm interested in it,
Yeah.
even if I don't know how to do it, my answer is yes. Let's figure it out.
So you look at some of these um, pop, producers these days that are um, have sort of associated their brand with the genre of music that they produce. So,
Yeah.
say Metro Boomin is trap, Murda Beats like hip hop trap, um, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis R&B, um, and the you don't really hear of them often crossing genres. Maybe Pharrell,
Mm-hmm.
um, he does it often, but he sort of keeps an essence. Um, what do you think that does to the brand of your music, or like how people associate you with your music? It Do they see you as a Latin guy? Do they see you as a K-pop guy, or do they see you as this sort of like multi-genre producer?
Yeah. I think it's a multi-genre thing. I tend to get most calls based on the last big record I had. So if it was a Latin record, then it's all Latin records. And even if I'm already doing K-pop albums, I'm still getting that. But now I'm finding the worlds are blending so much where I'm getting calls like, "Hey, you do a lot of K-pop and you do a lot of Latin. We've got a Latin K-pop artist. We want you to do their thing." So
Mm,
um, I think having those skills has been an asset. Um, yeah, I don't know how that affects the brand per se. I mean, I've always looked up to like, and I don't know that there's one right way to do it. Like a Murder Beats, who's amazing. Like he's the best at what he does in that genre. I'm sure he could do other genres as well. So if it's, I think it's just what piques your interest. And thinking
mm,
of like a Rick Rubin or a Max Martin, who have sort of gone across all the genres, interest me because I'm just such a music lover that all of those styles, I think, excite me. And so I've never thought about it from a brand perspective, but I think of it more just from music. If you need um, music, maybe it makes me like worldly cult. I don't know, like blending sounds, which has only
mm.
helped my production because I'll take Latin sounds and put them in K-pop records, and then K-pop rhythms and throw them in rap records. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I just
Cool.
do what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Speaking of which, like, can you maybe walk us through how you would approach creatively, just say like a K-pop record versus a Latin record? Because there must be a different thought process behind tackling the um, sonic results of each one. Is there not?
Yeah. Um, you kind of go back to what I was saying earlier about the chords. I think Keith Richards said, music is a language that doesn't speak in particular words, it speaks in emotions. And if it's in the bones, it's in the bones. I think the chords dictate the feeling, and we use that as sort of a directional anchor point, the coordinates to the feeling. And I think from there, you're just assessing the genre and the rhythms that are native to whatever genre you're doing. and then finding ways to make those unique, not so left field that they don't fit within the genre, but find new ways to do those rhythms. And outside of structure, everything else is just the chords and the feeling, and then figuring out the drum patterns for that feeling. All right, let's dive into how I would approach a K-pop record and how that differs from like a Latin record. The biggest differentiators you're going to notice are drums and structure. So on a K-pop record, they tend to have more sections, and this is not a general rule. You can do anything you want. I'm just sort of generalizing to get a point across, and obviously you can play with structure, etc. So K-pop records are going to have mainly your verse and then a pre-hook that goes into a chordal melodic part leading into a big either drop or magnified version of the verse. So with this record, I started with the musical element, and then obviously the second being the drums. You're going to have a different drum pattern. So I started with this. And now I could have taken this, if it was going to be a Latin record, taking this part, you could just go into like a, right? Or you could go into a trap record, a trap vibe. But so we're going pop. So I added some snaps and then add some 808s. Little kick and some claps. And that's the main foundational bed. Now that part is kind of monotone, so now we're going to go into that pre-hook I was talking about where we go into like a chordal section. And then that gets us back into the bigger hook. So now there's more going on, there's more chants. And then from there, you could even go into a post hook or another section, but that is the differentiator. Again, starting with the music, the chords, the musical element, and then finding the beat that sort of helps dictate the genre, but obviously you play with that and make it your own. All right, let's talk a little bit about how I would approach a Latin record. And to be honest, it wouldn't be that much different than I would approach a rap record, a K-pop record, a pop record. I'm usually starting with chords, so the chords, the coordinates, they're dictating the energy, the direction. Is this a party record? Is this emotional? Are we telling a love story? And the lyrics and the chord feelings don't always have to match, but at least for me, it's a good starting point if I'm just starting with a track. So in this instance, I played some plucks and sort of a melodic part to start. And then once I have that, I usually try to find a sound that is unique that I can add on top of that. So in this case, there was a vocal chop. And then what I like to do is take the same thing. If it's in the beginning and the hook, I'll just change it up slightly and use it as pieces of the verse. So here we've got sort of an open verse. And then when it comes in on the second half, a modified version of that. And now that we have our foundation, we go, okay, what direction are we going in? This is going to be a Latin record. Do we want it to be a reggaeton style Latin record? Where do we want it to go? And so, you know, the cool thing about coming up with great musical ideas first is that you can put it in so many genres. So this could be a trap record, like, or a hip hop record. You could go funk dance, right? 4 on the floor. But for this instance, we're going Lat. So a lot of what dictates genres is the drums. At least that's been my experience. So here we've got some drums that I added in. Now we'll add a bass in, give it a little movement. And then just coming back to the hook, I'll tie in that, you know, that ear candy element from the beginning, and that's how I would approach a Latin record. if I'm working with an artist and we're bringing in writers, obviously I would utilize writers that are more familiar with that genre, make sure that the room is populated with people who can really get us the best sound in that area. And then my job is to take that and try to push it left a little bit. Um,
Mm.
and I think the key is to not go so far left that you've alienated everybody, and not go so into the genre that it's corny and you've heard it a million times.
You have worked with some legendary artists in your catalog, such as Backstreet Boys, Lil Wayne, and Flo Rida. Um, and I can imagine from when you sold that first beat, to Birdman featuring the game, to now, where like internet was just sort of bubbling up at that time, and now we're sort of like full on internet age. Um, how have you seen the game evolve over the span of time that you've been involved in the industry?
Yeah, it is so much easier and so much harder all at the same time. It's a weird dichotomy. I mean, before you really had to know people, and someone at the label, or it was just you had to be introduced, otherwise you weren't getting, there was no way to get your music out there to anybody. um but there weren't as many producers. I think when I first started producing, I had to take out like a Guitar Center credit card for like $10,000 and go buy an MPC and a Triton and then this giant Mac keyboard and then a Pro Tools HD system. And so there was an investment cost in doing that, um, which was expensive. And now you can just grab a laptop and make beats for pretty much free,
Mm.
at like a high quality level. So and the hard part now is that there's so many people doing it. So how do you stand out? But it's changed. There's no more gatekeepers. I mean, you're always going to have your labels, but for the most part, you can DM A&Rs and managers, and they're going to respond and straight up to artists. I've DM'd, even now, I'm still getting placements just DMing beats that I think like, hey, I think this would work for her. And the manager gets back and like, hey, she loves the beats.
Mm.
Here's her number or her email. Send her some more. Um,
Yeah.
that's access that I've never had before. So, but there's so much more competition, and so
Mm.
standing out's even harder, and you have to up your game and be even better than everybody else. So it's evolved, but again, you can just make beats anywhere in the world on your laptop. So I would say it's gotten easier. And it's made
Yeah.
music better.
Is that a pressure for you in terms of, you know, keeping up with the competition, keeping up with the Joneses, trying to stay on top of your craft, evolving? Is that a stress or a pressure for you at all?
No, it used to be. It used to be. I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about one of the hardest parts when you're starting. You send beats and nobody responds because your beats are not good at that point. I think if you focus on you doing the best that you can do, be the best producer you can, and you make the highest quality records, like every time they call you back, when the record's good. Um, and so I think if you can just focus on you and put those blinders on in your craft, then everything else just comes naturally. But I think if you think about the competition or anybody else, then it's a distraction. And even with other producers, like most of my friends, I'm elated when they get a placement. And every time I go over there to their house or their studio, I'm learning new tips and tricks and I'm showing them stuff and I'm getting new plugins. And so I think that competition mindset hinders you in the long run because it's um it's a short-lived strategy.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Definitely. Um, as we were talking before, sort of getting started here, you had mentioned some of your work that you've done specifically in K-pop, iconically with YG Entertainment and Big Bang. That has now evolved into a new project that you are currently wrapping up. What is it like working with uh, a legendary company in K-pop like YG Entertainment.
Yeah, it's amazing. Obviously, it's an honor every time I send records. You never know what they're gonna think, and with a lot of the records, I send tracks, and they will just believe in the vision, and they'll say, this was perfect for this, and obviously they're very innovative and forward thinking, and the best at what they do creatively on that end, and that team is able to take things to another level and oversee things. And a lot of what I do is I'm doing tracks, and then I'm getting the songs back and then producing back around the songs. And so a lot of it is track heavy, um, which makes it easy for me because I can just really focus in on the track. Sometimes if you're doing the whole song, you're worried about mixing and the vocals. And I just make things that I think are fun and creative and that I'm excited about. And um, luckily they've responded to it, and I'm very grateful for that.
Mhm. So do you get to work in studio with the like Big Bang members or the Blackpink or Baby Monster members, or is it more of a correspondence type of thing over the internet?
It's all through the internet. I've been to Japan. Obviously, we met in Japan. I've
Mhm.
never been to Korea, but I think I'm going to take a first trip this year. So all of it has been the through email. I'll send the
Mm.
track, and then they'll send back vocals, and I'll send new edits, and they might have some edits, and then eventually it gets to a good place. But again, like, they're really good at communicating what they want in a really clear way that makes it super easy. Because
Mm.
a lot of, not all A&Rs, but a lot of A&Rs and like labels, there's a lot of people involved, and it gets nine people have ideas, and they're like, what if the drop was a ballad, and what if the ballad's a reggaeton beat, but with them it's super clear, it's concise, they know exactly what they want, and it makes my job super easy.
Yeah, I mean, do you enjoy that that way of working, or do you prefer being in the room with the artist, um, directing vocals, sort of like being in a more collaborative like setting that is sort of like a vibe in the studio?
I do, honestly, I like both. What I like about the beat side is that I get to I don't know, I get to go where I would go. It's all me on the track end, and I can be as weird or experimental as I want. And then when I'm in the room with people, especially artists, I'm there to help facilitate their story and their vision and bring that to life. And I love both because they both present their own unique challenges, but also benefits. There is something great about being in the room and feeling that energy and connecting with people. And um, but I love being in the studio too by myself and just walking in circles and being like, "What does that sound like? Oh, that's great!" I can just be myself.
Yeah,
Um, which I'm usually myself anyways. I'm that in sessions as well. So uh, yeah, I like both. There's no right way.
cool. um Being somebody who, I guess, a lot of your work is sort of sort of like, how do I self sustain this work? um I would think a lot of it's a mental game, mental challenge, a lot of discipline involved in doing what you need to do to stay on top of your craft, um, do the session work, do all the reps, if you will, to find success in your work. Um, what does a typical week look like for you, and how do you spread out your time to maximize your productive output to win in this game?
Um, I think each week has to be malleable. A lot of weeks are set in advance, so I book my sessions weeks, months in advance, and so I kind of have an outline of what my week is going to look like session wise, and I try to buffer days in between to finish the record so I can send out bounces if it's a heavy intensive record or we started from scratch and recording vocals. um, some weeks I will not book anything and I'll just make tracks if I know I've got a project coming up or a camp or something I'm excited about. And then sometimes I will have a bunch of stuff on the books, and then I'll get called for a big project. And then I'm like, man, there's no way I can do both. So I call my managers and say, we're going to have to cancel like all of those sessions for that week because this is priority, you know?
Mm.
And so I think it's just being flexible, or not cancel, just reschedule to a later date is maybe a better way to put it. You just have to, unfortunately, be flexible in your schedule. Yeah. So usually,
Mm.
but discipline. I'm usually working like 12 to 15-hour days these
Wow.
days.
What time do you start usually?
I get here around 9:30. You know, I get up, work out, and then get the girls ready. I have two kids. I get the girls ready for school at like 7:30. Get them out the door. Get to the studio by 9:30, and then probably leave here around 11 p.m., 12 p.m. Sometimes later.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a pretty intense schedule.
it
It's
is.
it's not a 9 to 5. It's kind of like, you know, that's by choice that you're working those hours because that's what you know it takes to get that next thing, that next project, right?
100%. And I definitely double down when I have opportunities. So, hey, they love this record, send more. I'm like, okay, there's an in here. They already love this. So if I send 5 records, what happens if I send 15?
Mm.
Um, and I'll just double down on projects even more once I know there's a window there and they like it. So, um, yeah, definitely. It's important, and it helps my production game. I'm always getting better. I'm always learning. I'm always growing. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, you got to put those reps in.
Word up. Now, working this hard, putting in all these hours, in your mind, what what is it that what is the underlying motivation, and when all is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
Hmm. I think the motivation is that I just love it. Like, I don't know of anything else I would want to do, and not anything else I could do, but there's just nothing else I want to do. I love it. Don't get me wrong. It definitely has its days where you're like, you know, and I've joked with friends and I've heard other creatives say this. Like, I would say once a week I quit in my head. At nighttime I lay in the bed and I'm like, I am just done with this. And then I wake up in the morning and somehow that disappears and I'm like ready to go again. Um, which might be a psychotic problem. But it really does. It like disappears the second I wake up. And I think my legacy is just that I loved creating, I loved making music. And I think the undervalued part is I love people. You know, I love working with people. I love being in rooms and telling those stories. And it's kind of like a psychologist session every time you get into a room with artists and writers. Like, even if you've just met, for some reason they get on the couch and they just feel like telling you their deepest, darkest, intimate issues, and it's a safe space and everybody's like communicating, and I love that part about what we do, and that always inevitably grows into a really good song, or there's a gems from there we can take. And the people aspect is, I think it's my favorite thing about this job. So I'm hoping people think that I made amazing music, they loved working with me, and that I led with love, and they always felt like they got their best
Hmm.
with me.
Is there any particular project or piece of work that you're most proud of?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I don't think there's one. They're all like little memories of time. Each one's like a little baby. Some maybe, you know, like less than others, but each one of them is like this moment of time, kind of what I was saying about my dad's car. It's like I know what studio I was in when I made it. I remember how I felt, what I was going through, where I lived. I remember every restaurant I would order from in the area, like, ooh, the salmon burger from that studio. Every time I hear that song, it's like takes me back there.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of grateful for each and every one of those memories, even if the end result wasn't something I like now. I know I was proud of it then, and so it's hard to pick one.
Gotcha.
That's my cop out answer.
um, well, we have one more question before the rapid fire round.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so generous with your answers. Um, the rapid fire round, by the way, is just sort of not as deep type of question, just sort of like one answer um, type of deal. But I guess the final question in the main question section here is for those discouraged in their mom's basement, working on music, not really knowing where this is all leading to, and feeling like giving up because um, they're just not sure. Like they can't see what's next on the horizon, and they may not have a mentor. They weren't as fortunate as you to find somebody like that. Is there any advice you could give to that up and coming music creator?
I think as far as the mentor side of it, now with YouTube, you could find virtual mentors, and there's a lot more resources. But I think on the creative side, honestly, just believe in yourself. Like even if you're bad, that you are the absolute best. Like no one's better than you, and have that growth mindset that even though you are the best, every day you're going to get better. But I think having that confidence, that it's almost like delusional confidence, and that just because someone doesn't respond to your song now doesn't mean that it won't resonate with somebody later. And sometimes songs just haven't found the right home. So you send out record, you send out a track, you send out tracks, send out tracks. No one's hitting you back. Those offerings have not found their right home yet. And then you'll send out the same track that everybody didn't hit you back with or didn't like, and they'll say, "Man, this is amazing." And you're all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my god, yeah, no, it is amazing." Like they'll have you doubting yourself. So I think you have to have like a delusional confidence that what you're offering to the world is amazing, while still going, I have a lot of room to grow and get better every day. I think if you do that, you'll be fine, because people respond to the music, but they also respond to you. It's like when you see somebody who loves what they do so much, it's like it's so attractive to people. Like that love, people feel that. And so if you're conveying that to the people around you and you're making it finds its way into the music, the soul of the music. And yeah, just be delusionally confident, and you'll get there.
I love that delusional confidence. Got to be crazy.
Gotta be crazy.
um, awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. I think those wise words will go a long way for people. Um, if we can just transition now into the rapid fire round, are you down to do this?
I'm down. Let me get some more caffeine. Let's do it.
All right. Um, just 8 questions, really, really simple. Um, and yeah, after that, we can sort of just wrap things up. And if you have anything to promote or anything like that, we'd love to hear that as well. So, rapid fire round. Question number one: what DAW do you use and why?
Studio One all day, every day. It's the best DAW in the game. Um, I originally was on Pro Tools. Like I said, I was an MPC. Everything was moving to all laptop DAWs, and I downloaded Ableton, Studio One, Cubase, Fruity Loops, and Logic. And at the time, Studio One was the only one that allowed you to import Pro Tools shortcuts. So my learning curve was like cut in half. And then Melodyne
Mhm.
was integrated like 6 years ago. And then Vocal Line was integrated, and it just easily was the best DAW in the world.
Yeah, how come people don't talk about Studio One as much as
I know.
it's all about Ableton and uh, Fruity Loops, and I think that's it, right? Like the culture
Yeah,
is mostly around the Ableton and FL Studio, I think.
for sure. I'm trying to, I've got a couple friends that use Studio One, so we're trying to bring that to the masses. But I don't think it matters what DAW you use.
Yeah. Okay, Studio One, you heard it here from Chaz Mishan. He's
Come
bigging
on.
you guys up full on to, so sponsorship better be coming.
Let's go.
Favorite plugins?
Um, Fab Q3 EQ plugin. Use that for everything. Little Alter Boy, even as like a verified tape stop, not so much as like a pitch shifter. Um, Thermal on everything these days, and like Serum a lot still in
Hmm,
Omnisphere.
gotcha. What is a sound that always brings you joy?
The sound of my daughter's laughter. When my
Hmm,
daughters laugh, there's zero feeling better in the world.
hmm. Have you ever sampled it and used it in a track?
No, but I absolutely should. I'm gonna do that today when I go home.
How would you rank your music creator skill sets out of 10 for the following? Beat making,
10,
lyric writing,
2. I'm terrible at
sound
that.
design,
Like a 6. I'm not designing
mi-
that often.
mixing,
Like an 8.
top lining,
Like an 8. I'm good at melodies, terrible with lyrics.
music theory,
10.
arranging.
9. I think I could always switch it up more than I do. Yeah.
Got it. What is your facial expression or reaction when you know you made some heat?
God, it's changed so much because it used to be like a ooh kind of thing. I would jump up and down, run around the room. Um, Now when I make something, I feel like getting excited, and then I just I keep it at bay because
Yeah,
sometimes you think it's amazing and you're sending out and you're like, that is not it. Even though I still think it's amazing, it just doesn't respond. And then the ones you not that excited about, everybody responds to. And so I realized that I'm just the vessel to create these sounds, but it's up to everybody else to like or not like them. So I try not to get excited.
gotcha. Who is your biggest competition?
That's so cliche, but I'm gonna say me. Yesterday.
If AI technology took over your job as a music creator, what new career path would you choose?
Psychologist. I like people. I like
Hmm,
what makes people tick.
I think
I
you'd
don't
be
know
a
that
good
I'd be a
shrink.
yeah. Tell me your problems.
Tell me about your father.
Yeah.
Cool, man. What's next for Chaz? Anything you want to promote?
um, just working on some new projects, great new artists I'm excited about. A lot of these projects obviously I can't talk about till they're done, so there's not much to promote. We are we're launching a new podcast later this year. And got some new exciting projects coming up, but you'll have to stay tuned for those.
Well, Chaz, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us and give us your 2 cents about the music creator game. I think a lot of the insights that you had, once again, are going to go a long way for anybody that's looking for some direction. And yeah, I just want to wish you the best and wish you many more blessings along your way. I think you're one of the most talented guys that I've ever met along my journey, and it's just been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you.
The honor's mine. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.